In this video, we're going to continue working on the Meetup system, and the feature that we're going to work on is making payments through the Stripe payment gateway. If you go to meetup.com, you might see that some of the events actually requires payments. Most of them are free. So we are going to implement a feature when the events are not free. Because I switched to a different computer, I installed everything new, and I don't have the original database. Therefore, I just created a new event. Before I continue with the payment, I just realized we created a bug from the previous work, which is leaving. You can see that on the bottom, there used to be a dark bar for attendees to try to attend an event. Right now, that bar is gone. I cannot see that bar anymore. So let's troubleshoot. It must be because of the previous one, because I clearly remember that before we implement this leave events comments, we no problem whatsoever with seeing that bar. If you are not actually sure, you can go to your source control and switch to an early commit point, load that into your Visual Studio and run it. Find a place where there's no problem. And then you will realize at what point you created that issue. So if you didn't notice that after a while, this is one of the easier ways to locate where the problem is. So I'm just going to look at this leave comments thing here. It's not so obvious where and at what part it went wrong. So what I think I would do is I will go to the place where this is used. So leave comments component. I believe this is used on the view event, right? View a single event. Let's go to the component over here, and you can see that we have this leave comments component. And let's comment this out. And then let's run the application again and see whether we can remove that problem just by commenting out the leave comments component. Rejoining failed. So what is wrong with this? Build succeeded. Everything seems to be working. I don't know why this failed. Let's run it again and click on it again. Now it's here. Now you can see that by removing that bar, we're seeing this dark attendee bar again. Now we are absolutely sure that problem is within this. So one thing I recalled that in order to have the attendee component, not this one, but the attendee bar component to be displayed. So where is that attendee bar component? I believe we have a footer component. It's this one. Right? In order for this to be displayed, we used render fragment. And we use render fragment in a way that in order to clear it, we created the base component, right? So where is our base component? Within the shared folder and within the component, I believe. Yeah, we have our base component right here. And at the beginning, we created this base component for the sole purpose of clearing this section content. Right? When we clear it with null, then it removed that RSVP footer component completely, right? But then later, we added all of these different properties for authentication authorization purposes. And because of that, we use the base component on a lot of different things without thinking that the original purpose is to actually just clear it. I believe in our leave event comment component, we also inherit base component because we wanted to use this as authenticated and perhaps some other things within the base component. But the problem with this is that this actually cleared the footer component. So we no longer see that footer anymore. Therefore, in order to see it, we have to change this. Either we don't actually inherit from the base or we modify the base component. Let's go ahead and try to modify the base component. So I would say that we modify it so that we create a new protected, and then it's going to be a virtual that can be overridden in subcomponents. Okay? So let's say this is going to be, and I'm going to call it should clear section content. And I set it to true. So by default, we're going to clear the section content. And here, before I actually clear it, I'm going to check whether we should clear it or not. And only when this is true do we actually clear it. So after I make this change, nothing actually changed in terms of the behavior because the default value is true. So in the place where we don't want to clear the section content, then we can override this property to set it to false. For example, in our problematic leave event comments component, this is where we do need to override it. So let's go to the bottom over here and let's override the, let's say override. So Visual Studio although this is actually the latest version I just installed on this new computer, it doesn't actually show any IntelliSense for override. Sometimes it works, sometimes it just doesn't work. I really don't know why, but hopefully I can still use the base class property. I can still use AI. Now there's a property. I believe it's in my clipboard. No, it's not. Okay, let's go back to the base component. I'm going to copy this thing. Then let's go back to leave comments component, and it's overriding. Okay, good. At least the AI for automatically generating code still works. Otherwise, I'm screwed. So false. So here I'll override it so that the value is false. When the value is false, it no longer will clear the component. So let me delete this line. It's going to clear the footer component. So let's go to the place where I think it's the view event. And okay, so we have this uncommented already, right, in the view event component. Now let's run it. And it should work this time. Okay, you can see, actually, let me close it so that we are sure that it is this one. Okay, I'm going into it and now I see it. Although I leave even common components. Oh, it's not being displayed because I didn't log in. So let me log in. Okay, I'm here. And then you can see the leave comments component is still here, right? But the footer bar is also here. So this bug is fixed by just introducing a virtual property and then override it in the place where we don't actually need to clear the footer bar, okay? And this would affect all of the components that renders on this page. This should be applied to all of the components, including the attendee component. So let's go to attendee component. Fortunately, the attendee component doesn't have any logic other than just rendering the users. So it's not actually inheriting from the base component. Therefore, it has no effect, no problem with the attendees component. Yeah, so later if we put anything or any other components on here that derives from the base component, then we have to be really careful. And we need to override the should clear section content property. Okay, so this bug is fixed, and let's go ahead and working on actually implementing the payment. So for payment to make sense, the events themselves should be chargeable. It should cost money. Right now, if we go to our data folder here, so where's the data folder? Right here, go to entities and we look at the event and there's no pricing information in here, right? There's no pricing information. So we need to add the pricing information. At the bottom, these two fields are navigation properties. So let's add actual field here. So first one, I'm going to call it ticket price. So the type is decimal. And I would say that this is a nullable field in terms of database. So I'm here using this question mark just to tell entity from a core that when you generate the migration script, make sure that this column is nullable, right? I don't want to create problems for existing data. And then here I'm going to say ticket price. Okay, so we have a ticket for this. And then I'm going to use an annotation, say range is from 0 to, let's use double maximum value, right? Maximum value. So that's it. And we have a second one. I'm going to say property, and this is going to be a boolean, again with a question mark for the same reason. And then I'm going to say this one is refundable. Okay, so we're saying that whether the event costs money by using the first column, and then if it costs money, is it refundable or not? And then I'm going to just copy these two and paste into the view model, which is in the shared folder over here. Right, view model over here. Let's go to not this comment, but event. Let's go over here. So now that we changed the view model, we can go to the slice where we work on view event and added event, actually. Added event and even create event. Are they using the same thing? Yeah, they're using the same add or update event. So let's go to this is actually a shared component over here. And we need to make sure that we add the section where we allow the user to populate those two new fields. So right now, what does it actually look like? And let's really go to manage events and try to create event. So it looks like this. So where should we put the pricing information? Perhaps above the cover image and below category. Okay, so let's go to Visual Studio here and let's scroll up to the place where we have, so this is the cover image, and we're going to add those two new fields over here. So we're going to have class from group, right? And it's trying to generate code for me. So I'm going to accept it and just change it. Okay, so this one, I'm going to change it to ticket price. And the input, I'm going to change it to input number. And of course here, this is going to be ticket price. Here, we already have ticket price. I don't know why it's not showing me. The event view model, is there anything wrong? I feel like it's not showing me all of the color coding. See, this is not actually showing me all of the color. Even this is not being... Let me close Visual Studio and see whether I can fix this by just reopening it. Okay, now it's much better. I was really hoping that it's going to come back, and it did come back. Okay, so here we have ticket price, and then here, this one goes to ticket price as well. Now we're going to have another one for refundable. So this is refundable. Let's go over here, change this one to refundable. And ID should be refundable. The label is also refundable. Let's have a question mark. So it's a question, is it for refundable or not? And then this validation is for refundable. So what I think is that we don't have to show this unless the user thinks that the event is actually costing money. So perhaps the easiest way to do that is to use a logic here. You're going to say, if the event view model the ticket price has value and at the same time is greater than 0, then I don't need to have this. I'm just going to move these two fields inside this curly braces. So Control KF doesn't work. Let me select again, Control KF. Still doesn't work. Okay, I manually did it. All right. So if the price is greater than 0, this stuff seems to be a crack logic. Let's go to the definition of, we're going to add another one over here. So we're going to have boolean has cost, and I'm going to default it to false. But here for the getter, I'm going to check whether ticket price is greater than 0. Let's create a traditional. I'm going to have has equals false, so I don't need to initialize it this way, and then have a getter, and we have some logic here. So if it's existing event, the ticket price could be greater than 0 already. If it's greater than 0, this has cost will return 2. So otherwise, it's going to just return has cost. So I'm going to say if ticket price is greater than 0, then I'm going to return ticket price, or as suggested, no. So here, I'm going to return not ticket price. I'm going to return 2, right? Because it has cost. Otherwise, I'm going to return has cost. And then the setter is just going to set the value, but it doesn't have to. Does it have to time? Okay, so this is right. So if the incoming value is false, then this I'm going to set it to null, okay? Because this is a nullable decimal. Now let's go back over here. So instead of using this logic, which doesn't work, we're going to say has cost. And then above this, we're going to have another form group. So let me copy this one because refundable should be a checkbox. All right, checkbox. And now it's telling me cannot convert from boolean to bool. This actually reminds me that I don't need to use a question mark here because the default value is actually false anyways. So let's go over here and cheat this one as well. Okay, coming back over here, I'm going to copy this. We're going to have a checkbox above this. And then we are not going to use a label. We're not going to use a validation. We're probably going to have a label just to wrap around this checkbox. And we don't need the ID for this one. Plus will be form check dash input, this one. And of course here, this one is also the same plus. And then this is going to be bound to, forgetting a double quote over here. So this is going to be bound to has cost. And then we provide a label here and say this event requires a ticket, something like that, a ticket purchase. And let's run this just to make sure the look and feel, at least the look and feel is correct. Okay, so it's telling me SQL exception because we didn't run migration. I thought that we don't have to run first, but might as well just run the migration anyways. So let's add a migration, and I'm going to say add payment related those. Build failed. What is wrong? I noticed this problem after I migrated everything to this new computer. So what I'll do is I will bring up, let's say, a command line, developer, let's use developer, and then I'm going to say .NET Clean, and let's do a .NET build as well. and it says build succeeded, right? So let's try to go to package manager again and try to do it. Okay, now it says build succeeded. Let's take a look at this. Since it gives a warning over here about the ticket price. So it generated this column for me, ticket price under this table, and it's decimal 18.2, which is fine. Nullable is true. This nullable is false, but the default value is false. Okay. And now let's run the migration. Not add migration, but update database. Okay, everything seems to be okay. Now let's run this entire application again. Okay, so it's running now. And let's go inside. We're going to end as a organizer. And then I'm going to manage the events. Let's go over here and take a look at the UI. So this event requires a ticket price. Of course, at the beginning, it doesn't require a ticket price. So let's check this, and if I say minus 100, and it tells me that must be between 0 and whatever. So this is a huge number. Like I said, I don't have to change that. Let's say this is, I don't know, $25, $250, okay? And it is refundable. And then I click on update. Now it's updated. Let's go back to the event and see whether it's updated. Okay, so everything is displayed properly. And we can check database to see whether it is truly okay or not. So let's go to SQL Management Studio. Should connect to the database. Now, since I reinstalled everything, SQL Server is also installed. And therefore now I can use Windows authentication. I don't have to use SQL authentication anymore. And also I actually updated my code before I started recording the video. Updated my app settings. As you can see, I've updated my settings and I changed it to integrated security, which means Windows authentication. Okay, so now let's run it. Oh, actually, did I already run? Okay, yeah, I was trying to. Let's go over here and let's look at the tables and let's select top 1000. And you can see we have this event created and we have refundable 2 and ticket price is 250. Now let's update it. Let's change this one to false and then update it. Now let's rerun the query. Refundable is changed to 0. So which means false. That's correct. Okay, so now let's actually create a new event. Let's just call it gaming event and description is just gaming event. And this one is going to be 0606 and let's play games for 1 hour. Capacity, let's say 10 people. And this is an in-person event. I'm going to use the same event that we always use. And let's say this is actually a event that costs money. Let's say $10. Refundable, no. Cover image. We don't have an image for that. Let's bring up our trusted AI to generate me an image. You know what? I'm going to just steal an event. Let's go inside here and let's just steal this image. All right. I'm going to choose this new image. Something's wrong with this image. Maybe this image is too big. It shouldn't be. Okay, let's get it smaller. Let's just take this portion. Okay, this is good. Let's create an event. All right, let's go inside again. Double check that everything is actually working properly. Okay, we completed this part of the code and let's see what's next. So what's next? So the next one would be when I log in as so I'm going to actually go over here. I can see the 2 events. That's okay. I'm going to log out and I'm going to log back in with another user, which is this first user. So now if I go to any of the events, so if I go to this event, which actually should cost me money, and I want to see the pricing displayed right here if it actually cost me money, because I want to know that this is actually not a free event, right? So I'm going to go into Visual Studio here, and then I'm going to go to View Event. So go over here, View. This is the View Event slice, and I'm going to go to View Event Component over here. So right below, I should write about the description. We are going to show the pricing. So over here, I'm going to have a H6, and then say price. And I'm going to have a paragraph. And this is actually, it knows what I'm trying to do, right? So let's see whether we can just do this. If it costs money, it's going to display this. Otherwise, it says this event is free. I'm going to change it slightly different. So I'm going to display, I'm going to do this. Actually, I'm going to just delete this whole statement here. I'm going to use a span. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a badge class from Bootstrap. And then also here, I'm going to use explicit razor syntax here. I'm going to say if underscore view model ticket price. Okay, let me close it and see whether it's going to give me IntelliSense. Still doesn't give me IntelliSense. See, this doesn't have highlight. Let me close Visual Studio again and try to open it. Okay, so the color coding is back. So IntelliSense should be here. If the ticket price is greater than 0, then here I'm going to use the primary background. Otherwise, I'm going to use the success background that will use to show the word free. And then within this, I'm going to use the Blazor syntax. So I'm going to just copy this Blazor syntax. And if the price is greater than 0, then I'm going to display the ticket price. So string interpolation, event view model, the ticket price. I'm going to say toString like this. And let me minimize Solution Explorer here. Otherwise, things become simple. I'm just going to say free. So now I have to change to value.toString. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. Okay, so this part is good. Let's run and see the look and feel. Okay, now it runs. Let's go to this event and we see price. It says $250, right? So this one is not free and this one is $10. This one is free, but I do want to see how it looks like when it is free. So I'm going to go over here and add it to top 200 rows. Let's change this one to 0 or to null. It doesn't really matter. Either one would do. And then let's go to gaming event and now it shows free. So this is the batch class that I was talking about. Okay. So depending on whether the event is free or not free, when you try to attend it, it should show different things. You see different effect here. Okay. So this is good. So for some reason, when I go to gaming event, this dark bottom attending bar is not here. Okay. So depending on whether the event is free or not, the behavior of clicking on the button will be different. So now we need to focus on the behavior of the button. So let's go to RSVP and then go over here. So currently, if you look at the logic here, it says, are you sure you want to RSVP? And if the user says yes, then we directly perform the logic of RSVP, right? We just basically run this RSVP service and just record a RSVP for the event for the user. Now this has to change because see, if the price is there, if the event costs money, then we will have to let the user actually go through the payment process and then come back and do the RSVP. And if the event doesn't cost money, if the event is free, then we'll go through this similar process, right? We will do the RSVP, but either way, we'll have to do RSVP. It's just that for the one that costs money, we'll have to do the payment first and then we'll do the RSVP. For the one that is free, we will have to do RSVP right away. So now it comes to a challenging point where we have to determine how we can deal with a problem that is related to vertical slice architecture, right? Because we have some sharing code. The part that is being shared is this RSVP thing. We need to do RSVP either way. But then if we take the user to go through the Stripe payment process, when it comes back, you still have to do RSVP. But then you see the payment process will be done in the payment slice, right? We're going to create a payment slice and then redirect the user to that page where the user will see the pricing and confirm whether the user will make a payment. And then we'll take the user all the way to Stripe, right? And from their website, it makes the payment. And after payment is succeeded, then it comes back to our application. So this whole process takes the user different, right? And when the process finishes, it has to also come here and call this RSVP event method. So this event method needs to be shared here in this slice, which is the RSVP slice, and also in the payment slice. So how do we deal with this type of problem, right? So the easiest way is that you create this RSVP event outside of the slice, right? You can create it in the shared folder because we already have the services folder under the shared folder here. Let me minimize everything so that you can see clearly. So we have all of the features here, and then we have the shared folder, and then we have services. And then we don't have many services because we don't want to have a lot of shared services. After all, we're using vertical slice architecture. We want to isolate different features and different functionality. We want to group those functionalities to those features, right? If we create too many shared services, we might as well follow some other architecture other than vertical slice. So since we're using vertical slice architecture, we try our best to relate according to features. So having that kind of mindset, I think what we can do in this case is to create an endpoint, right? Create an endpoint for running the RSVP event service. So in here, we are an RSVP event. We can create a RSVP event endpoint. Let me go ahead and try to create that. Okay. So right click on here, and then we're going to create a class. We can call this class RSVP event. Since we have been using uppercase P, let's just, okay, so we have this endpoint created, and this will be a static class. Remember, we did have some endpoint created under the shared folder over here, and we have this authentication endpoint. Okay? And this is a static class, which means that the reason why it's static class is that we're going to create a, what's it called, extension method. And because of that, let's just copy this. Okay. We can do it without doing a lot of different, without having to remember. So I would change this to map RSVP event inputs. Or maybe just simply say map RSVP inputs. And we're going to extend the web application anyways. So here, I'm going to say, we're going to do our RSVP. And to which event are we going to do a RSVP? This is going to be in this root parameters here. And this is going to be integer. And that if the event is free, then we just come to this path. If the event is not free, that means the user goes through the payment process. And when it comes back with a payment ID, or sometimes it's called charge ID, and sometimes it's called a payment intent ID. I think in Stripe, it's called payment intent ID, but either way, I'm using payment ID to refer to that. And then I have a question mark here, just basically saying this parameter is a optional parameter. It doesn't have to be here. If this one is missing, this is still going to be hit. Okay, we're still targeting this endpoint. Okay, now we are coming in with a integer event ID, which we always going to have. So event ID. This corresponds to this root parameter. And then we're coming in with a nullable payment ID. Corresponds to the second root parameter. And then we're dependency injecting this HTTP context. Let me make it look much better by just separating the parameters here. And of course, we don't need any of this, but we do need to dependency inject other things. And one of that is the RSVP event service. And also we are going to actually contact the database. Right? So we will have this RSVP event service dependency injected. Once we have these, we can go ahead, go to the further component. We're going to copy this and paste it over here in the endpoint. So we're looking at this authentication state in order to get the email. So in here, we don't have to do it this way, right? We were able to get the email in a different way, which we did in authentication endpoint. So let's scroll down to the place where we get the email. So let's use this instead. We have the email claim, and then in here, we're going to just use the event ID from the root parameter. And the email will be inside the email claim value. And then the RSVP event async will be changed to include another parameter, which is the payment ID parameter. Okay, so let's actually go ahead and try to make the change over here. This is a string. So payment ID is not actually a number. It's a complicated string that comes back from Stripe. So payment ID, and then by default, this is going to be empty string. So I'm not going to actually code anything in here. I'm just adding a parameter in order to get rid of this. So why an object is required for non-static? Oh, okay. This is because I'm using the wrong parameter name here. Okay, so that's good. So we have this result, and if the result is successful, we're going to take the user to the /event/ID. So this is going to be, especially after making the payment, if it goes to the same event, it could be a little bit confusing. So what I want to do is to take the user to the /users/user ID. I want to keep this one empty, and /manage RSVP-events. So this is the same URL. You click on this, anything that you have RSVP is going to show up here, and the passive one is going to show up here. Okay, so this is your /users/user ID and manage RSVP events. So I want to take the user here to basically let the user know that, hey, you have successfully registered, whether you made a payment or not made the payment, if the event is free. So because of this, I need to get the user ID. So how do I get the user ID? The only information I have is the user email. So in order to get the user ID, I need to dependency inject the IDB context factory. And it is for application DB context. Okay. Now here, I'm just call it context factory. And then I'm going to use the context factory over here. If the result is true, let's say using var DB context. So I use next factory to create a DB context. And then I want to get existing users. So I'm going to say, oh, we can use this. And then first or default email equals this. That's fine. And then come over here. we can say user, right? Question mark, user ID. So we don't have a navigation manager inside this endpoint. This is a minimal API endpoint, right? But we already dependency injected in the HTTP context. So we can use HTTP context.response.redirect. Okay, so when the result is false, here we want to let the user know there is a problem. So we redirect the user to a error page, and perhaps we're going to have a RSVP error, and we don't actually have the second parameter. That's why it complains. Okay, so this looks correct to me, but we do need to have a RSVP error page. Let's go ahead and try to create that. So here, let's create a new result component, and let's call it RSVP error component. And the title would be RSVP. And of course, we'll have our page interactive. And this is the one that we just mentioned, RSVP error. And then we want a event ID to be passed in so that we can lead the user to the event. Okay. And over here, I'm going to use the error message component. And the error message I'm going to specify here is fail to RSVP. Very simple message. You can come up with your own message. And then I'm going to have a line here. And have a link and take the user back to the event. So primary and then R. So this is going to be events and the event ID back to event. Now in here, I'm going to have a parameter that corresponds to the root parameter. So parameter and then event ID, just like this. Okay. So now that we created this RSVP event endpoint, we can go to program.ts and register that. Let's scroll over here down at the bottom. So after we map the authentication endpoints, we can map the RSVP endpoint. And also, since we added the endpoints, we don't need this logic here. We need to change this logic. So here, are you sure you want the RSVP for this event? Now, we will say that if the current event, so if the current event ticket price is null, if it has cost, then we need to take the user to make payment. Okay, so we're going to say navigation manager, navigate. So we haven't created the page yet, but I'm going to just create it right now, specifying that right now. We call it make payment. You can just call it payment or something. It doesn't really matter what you call it. And then I'm going to pass in the event ID. And here I'm going to say force load. Okay, so if it has a cost, if it doesn't have a cost, then we're going to just take the user to this RSVP endpoint, right? And it's / event ID. So here I'm going to say RSVP and event ID. And of course here force load is true. So here we take the user all the way to making payment. And in the case the event is free, we directly take the user to the RSVP endpoints. Right? And then we're going to work on this make payment slice where we're going to take the user to Stripe. And then when it comes back, it will have to come back to this RSVP endpoint, which we just created here, right? This endpoint, it will have to come back with a payment ID. But before we go ahead and create that make payment slice, remember we changed our RSVP event service. We just added the payment ID. So here it's actually pretty simple. All we have to do is to record this payment ID inside the RSVP, right? Which means that we're going to go ahead and go to RSVP and we're going to create a new field here to store the payment ID. It is already generated for me. So I'm going to take this and then I'm going to come back and here I'm going to just say payment ID equals to payment ID, right? And it's going to add to the context. So what is this context? This database context representing the database, right? So it's going to save it into the database right here. Now let's go ahead and try to create a make payment slice. Okay, so go ahead and create a new folder that represents a slice and I'm going to call it make payment. And inside the make payment slice, we're going to first of all create a component. Following the same convention, we're going to call it make payment component. And of course, first of all, we're going to have a page interactive make payment with a parameter event ID. So generate this for me. I don't know whether these make sense or not. Let me delete them first. All right, let's continue. So when the parameter is passed in, I'll try to automatically generate things for me. So when the parameter is passed in, I need to grab it from the database, right? So it has this get event by ID async. I think at least this is correct. And let's delete the second one. What is the second one for? Get payment. Okay, I don't need to get payment. I need to make the payment. So first of all, populate this event view model. That's correct. Now, I want to use the event view model to show the pricing information, right? So let's go ahead and work on the markup here. Now, I'm going to show the pricing information and the event information in a Bootstrap card. So div class and then card and then div class. I'm going to have a card header, right? And then this time I'm going to have a background, and you will see why it looks nice with the background. So then I'm going to say the text color is white, so within the background. And then we will have a title, let's say payment. Remember, this is a payment. This is already examined that there is a price for the event. Therefore, we have this payment header here in the card. And after that, I'm going to have a card body. Let's don't worry about this. Let's just try to close the div first. So we will have a event name here, and then we're going to provide the title, which is underscore event view model dot title, like this. And I want to provide the date information as well over here. So the date information can be taken from discovery events. It is the discovery event. So it's this one. I'm going to copy this and then come back and paste it right here. So let me minimize this part again. So paste this one over here. So this is the one. And then I'm going to replace it with event view model. Okay, so that's the first paragraph. And then we'll have another paragraph. Okay, and it's trying to generate the pricing. I do want that. So pricing information, and it's trying to do the batch thing for me. I think it's just trying to follow the approach. But right here, there's already a pricing. So we don't need the batch, because when you already here, we already determined there is a pricing information. So I'm going to just do ticket price to string, and then we just format that to a currency format. So after, not over here, so still within the cart body, and have a button over here. So this is going to be BTN success. So what we're trying to say here is that we want the user to make payment, and the behavior is captured within onClick. And we're going to use the checkout workflow from Stripe. I don't know why they call similar name, but over here, let's take the suggested code and then let's close the curly brace, and then let's see what it's trying to tell me. So we didn't actually create a payment service, but we already started writing it. And then it's also assuming that we have already written the make payment service, and we will create checkout session async. This method is correct. And I don't know whether I'm going to just pass in the event ID or there's something else, but we have this checkout URL. So if checkout URL is not, I'm going to actually say this is a session URL. So if this checkout URL is not now, then we navigate to this checkout URL. Okay? And this would take us to Stripe. Okay, now it's time to implement this make payment service. So let's copy this name and then let's go to Solution Explorer. So within the slice, we're going to create a new class and follow convention. We're going to call it make payment service. And we already create a method name here. So we need to actually, we have both this and this. So two methods. I'm going to implement this because the other one we already created is trying to generate this thing for me. I don't think I'll take it. Okay, so we have this already created and the name is already created. So this is async method, right? So we use async in task. So let's implement the other one first. So let's go to make payment over here. So we have this get event by ID. This is another issue that we already implemented this get event by ID in the view, I believe it's a view event. And in the view event service here, we have the get event by ID. Are we going to reuse this service within a different slice? Or are we going to extract this out to a shared location? Or are we going to recreate it? For this, I'm going to recreate it because first of all, this is really the first time I use vertical slice architecture. Secondly, according to my own understanding or my own, better to say my own analysis here, if the method is too complicated and it will be too complicated in the future, I mean, have a chance to be too complicated in the future, then I definitely don't want to duplicate in another slice. But in this case, we're simply just getting the event object based on the ID. So this is very simple, and in most cases, it won't need to be changed in the future. But say there could be a possibility, and this highlights the cause of vertical slice architecture, especially when we try to apply that to a framework here, right? We're trying to apply that to Blazor. we constantly run into this type of problems, but we need to find solutions since we're adapting this for Blazor, right? So I'm gonna just duplicate this in this different slice here in the make a payment service here. So I'm gonna paste this over here. And of course, this context factory needs to be dependency injected. So I'm gonna dependency inject IDB context factory, and for application DB context. So context factory, and then we will also have our IMapper be mapped, and I'm going to do a control dot to import namespace, and then control dot again to initialize this field, and control again to initialize this field. All right, so this method is created and it can be used from the component. But what are we going to do with this method? This is the most important method, right? So this is going to be some things going to be passed into it. So what is the workflow over here? The workflow over here is to use Stripe to create a checkout session. Right? So there are different ways to make payment with Stripe. One of them is this checkout session, which will allow users to actually go to Stripe to make the payment and then come back, right? Which means that we need to specify a URL, redirect URL when the payment is successful or unsuccessful. Okay? So we are going to use that. And that one is called session. So first of all, in order to use Stripe, we can add a Stripe NuGet package. So go to browse, we type in Stripe, and we select stripe.net. This is the library for .net. So just install the latest stable version. And then over here, what we are going to do is we're going to create a session. Okay. And for that, first of all, we need to have a service. And we can say this is a new session service. And we're going to do a control dot to import space. And remember, this is a checkout session, right? So we're going to use Stripe. And then we're going to do service.get async, and we need to pass in. So this signature here is not familiar to me. Maybe I imported a wrong namespace. Maybe it shouldn't be checkout. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's billing portal. Let's see. It doesn't even have. Oh, I think I used the wrong one. So let me roll back. I used the wrong method just now. So let's still try to use checkout. And then we're going to say service dot, instead of get, this is actually create async. And with create async, let's see. So we have session create options, and this is what I'm familiar with. So we need to provide a options object over here. Okay. So I'm just typing options, although I haven't created the variable yet. And if we're done successful, it's going to return us a session object. Now we need to create the options. And it's already generated for me, see? So session, create option, and then it generates these line items. So for example, you are using Stripe to make an e-commerce payment, which means that you selected some products, and you may select one product, you may select several products for this order, right? Because you're making a payment for an order, and an order can include line items. You can have one product, two products, many different products. And that's why they have line items. And then for each line item, you create this line items options, okay? Line item options. And you have quantities and price data. Price data highlights the currency, the unit amount. What I would do is I'm going to use unit amount. Okay. The unit amount is if you hover over, this is actually a long. So I'm going to convert what I have in the event view model. So that's why here we shouldn't be passing in just the event ID. We should pass in the event view model. Okay. So event view model, event view model. And then I'm going to say event view model dot ticket price. And this is, we need to time 100 to it because this unit amount is actually cents. That's why we time 100. And I'm going to do value. Okay, and then here, we're going to say event view model. We're going to provide the information. So title is that, and then we'll have description. So description here, I just want to have the dates, date and time. So I'm going to say date and time, and then, oh, it's generating for me. Okay, I'm going to take advantage of that. So we have begin date, begin time, end date, end time. I'm going to see how it looks like, or I can just provide some date format here, DDT, D, and begin time is HMMT. Do we need to do the end? Maybe we can do the end as well. So I need to have a colon there. So I'm going to do the end as well. I'm going to copy this, paste it here, and then I'm going to copy this and paste it on the end time over here. Okay, so this description, line items definition is provided. So basically the information we provided here is going to be displayed during the checkout process. It's going to display that you're purchasing this product and the description of the product is this. If you have multiple line items, you're going to have multiple of this. And each one of them will be displayed during the checkout process. And it's also going to display the price and the quantity. And here, there are some important information. So we have a successful URL, which means that if we specify this URL here, then after the checkout process, if the checkout succeeded, then it's going to redirect the user to this provided URL. And if the checkout is canceled, then it's going to go to this URL, right? So because of that, I want to provide a base URL from outside, because from here, we don't know about what the base URL is, and we can't just provide a relative URL because this URL is going to be passed over to Stripe. So it has to be an absolute URL, right? So in here, I'm going to add a parameter. I'm going to say base URL. And also, I'm going to provide a cancel URL. So for this cancel, it's going to be really simple. It's just a sign operation. And for the success URL, we're going to have to construct it. So it's going to be the base URL. And sometimes the base URL contains a slash at the end. Sometimes it doesn't. But either way, we're going to trim ending slash. And then after that, I'm going to do a slash. And I'm going to create a payment success page, which I haven't created, but I'm going to write the URL here. Okay. And after that, I'm going to provide the ID of the current event. So event view model, which is coming from the parameter here. This is going to be event ID. And finally, this is a placeholder for Stripe. So basically here, I provided this curly braces checkout session ID, which means that I'm asking Stripe to replace this placeholder with the actual session ID. So the final success URL will be whatever the base URL is, followed by payment success, followed by the event ID, and then followed by the session ID, which is going to be created during the checkout process and it'll be appended once the checkout finishes, right? Because we have this, then we will be able to access the session ID from our side, right? Because this base URL is our side, our application, right? All right. So now we have the options. We pass the options to here, and then we have the session. Now, finally, we need to return the session over here, right? Return the session URL over here. So therefore, I'm going to have a string as the return type here. And this is why it's telling me it is wrong. And let me see. Session URL. Oh, it's because I have missed the await keyword here. Okay. Now I should have a URL right here, which is a string. So there shouldn't be any problems. Okay. So go back to here. The make payment service needs to be injected from the top. So I'm going to say inject payment service. And now this, there complains there's no argument. Okay, so we need to pass in the base URL. So even the first one is not an event ID. It's the event view model. And then we pass in the base URL, which is navigation manager. Do we have navigation manager injected? No. So I'm going to come over here, inject the navigation manager, and then scroll down over here and followed by navigation manager. So this is the cancel URL, which means that we allow the user to come back to make payment page here. And then we get the checkout URL and we take that user to this particular URL, which is on Stripe. Okay. And once the payment is successful, it comes back to the payment success URL, which is this one. So we will need to also create that. So payment success is still under the make payment slice. So I'm going to create another user component and we can call it payment success component. And this component is going to be a page component. So this is payment success. And instead of session ID here, we are receiving different things. We're receiving event ID. We're also receiving the checkout session ID. So checkout session ID. And here we can say payment success. I'm not even sure whether we need to actually display this. Let's see what happens. So we will have a parameter, and from this parameter, we're going to receive the event ID. Okay? And also we're going to have the second parameter, and we're going to receive the checkout session ID, which corresponds to this one. Here, I don't even need an integer. So just use a string to get the event ID. Because once we have, so I'm going to use override, parameter and sync. All right. So once I have the checkout session ID here, I can try to get a session. So this is a Stripe session. Good. Coming up, provide an async method, async keyword, and then I'm going to say make payment service and get checkout session by checkout session ID. I can provide because this is a nullable string, right? So we can use that. And once we have the session here, then we can navigate to the RSVP. So here, remember, when we come up here, all we want to get from the session is the payment ID, which is the payment intent ID, right? So we will need to redirect the user to the RSVP endpoint that we created. So therefore, here we to inject this, and we need to use Navigation Manager to navigate to, right, the /RSVP/ and then we provide this event ID over here. And then we need to provide the session.payment. It doesn't like it because it doesn't know what it is. So let's actually go ahead and try to create this checkout session method here in the make payment service. Let's scroll all the way down, and here we will say async ask, and we're going to have a session, and we're going to call this get checkout session async, passing in the session ID. And what we need here is, first of all, need to get a session service, right? And then we can get the session based on the session ID, which is the one here, and then we can return the session. This is all we need. So in order to actually run any session service, so we have session service here and here. We're using it in both places, but we didn't provide a API key, right? So this is the reason why at this moment I need to show you about Stripe. So if you go to stripe.com and then you sign in, okay? You can just sign in with your Google account. I'm going to sign in with my Google account. Here, I'm going to select sign in with Google, and I'm going to use my email address, and I agree to continue. And then it brings up this dashboard. So sometimes the dashboard may have a problem coming up, and you can contact Stripe, which I tried, but they didn't get, well, they obtained all the information. I even did a screen recording. So I did that and everything, and they didn't get back to me yet. But then because yesterday I switched to a new computer, and with this new computer, I had no problems. But even after I deleted browsing data for all time in multiple different browsers, it still didn't work. Anyhow, I have this new computer and it's working. It's good timing. So now I need to get the secret key, right? And all you need to do is to click on this. So if it's the first time you use it, you can follow the same process. Go to stripe.com, log in with your Google account, and then you will be redirected to this dashboard. And on this dashboard, on home, right? If you go to different places, that's fine, but come back to home, and then you will see your API key here. And just click on this, and you copy that API key in the clipboard. And then you are going to code a solution. You go to your project, and then you manage your user secrets. You can create another entry for Stripe, put your secret key over here, and then just before you use anything from Stripe, you need to specify your Stripe API key. So you're going to say Stripe configuration.api key, and then you just need to your API key. So how do you get your API key? It's very simple. You can come over here and declare a string, right? And you can say this is the Stripe API key, and then you can initialize this with string.empty. But then during the instructing process, you can get your Stripe API key from the configuration. So in order to get it from the configuration, you can dependency inject I configuration, right? And then you can say configuration, and it's generated this for me. So Stripe API key, I think what I call there is secret key. And if it's not there, we're going to use empty, which is not going to work, but we already specified the secret key in the user secret file. So here I'm going to assign the Stripe API key, and I'm going to do the same thing before I use this session service. So I'm going to use this one right here. So this should work. Okay. So this is the workflow. I know it's complicated, for today's video, right? This is pretty complicated, but the workflow hopefully is clear to you. But if it's not clear, I'm going to explain one more time. You are going to come to a event page, right? You're going to come over here and you're going to click on the attend button, which means that you're clicking on this attend button in the footer, right? This attend button in the footer. And then this on-click event handler is going to be triggered, right? And if you have logged in, then it allows you to go through this RSVP process. And this RSVP process goes that if the event has a cost, then it's going to take you to the payment making process, which is going to take you to Stripe and come back to the success URL, which is the payment success component over here, right? And if the event is free, then it's directly taking you to RSVP endpoint, right there, which is going to finish the RSVP process, right? It's going to create the association between the user and the event. It's also going to record the payment ID if there is a payment ID. Okay, so that's that. And then if the payment is successful, it's going to redirect user back to the payment success component. Now we're having a issue here. Why we are having this? Cannot explicitly convert string to, so I'm missing a question mark here. And then we're having another issue and the reference is required for non-static. Oh, okay. So this needs to be injected. Okay. And then we have a semicolon here and we need to finish the code here. So I would have this payment intent ID. Payment intent ID is the payment ID that I was talking about. So we're going to append this payment ID at the end of this RSVP endpoint. So then it's going to take you to the RSVP endpoint with the payment ID right here. And then when it goes to RSVP service, it's going to record the payment ID within that RSVP record. So this is the whole process. Let me save it and then let's give it a try. We have coded so much. This is a moment of truth. Let's run the application. Okay, everything built successfully and we have 2 events. So I'm going to log out and I'm going to log in with my event creator, which means the organizer. And then if I go to manage events, I see these 2 events. Okay, so these 2 events are created by my own email. Now I'm going to use the other email, the other Google account and log in. Now you can see I'm not an organizer, right? I can try to become an organizer, but I'm not. And I'm interested in this, let's say in this gaming event. Okay. And I'm going to try to attend the event, but this one is free, right? This one is free. So it's good that we are doing a regression testing, making sure that even it's free, that this whole process still works. So let's do a regression testing. Okay, now the thing is it doesn't work because we didn't push this column to the database. So now let's go over to the package management console and we're going to add another migration again. So I'm saying add payment ID to RSVP and build failed. So why is that? What is happening here? This again happened and this always happened on my new computer. I don't know why. I didn't do a proper research, but let's go to this PowerShell. Okay, it's going to take a few seconds and it finished. Now I'm going to go to package manager console, try to add a migration again, and it succeeded. Everything is successful. All right, now let's run it again. Okay, so you can see that this process succeeded right after that. And now I'm going to go to home page again and I'm going to go over here. So this one is $250. It's quite expensive, right? And I'm going to click on this and it should now take me to the make payment page. Let me test cancel. Okay, cancel works. Click on yes. Okay, another exception. So cannot provide value, make payment. Okay, so I didn't register make payment service yet. Dependency injection place in program.cs. So let's go down to program.cs. Go over here and try to add it. Now I run it. Okay, so now it comes to the make payment page, right? I'm providing the event ID right here. Now, if I click on make payment button, so this is where the magic happens, right? It's going to take me, so it's going to, when I click on this make payment button, it's going to call this start the checkout process, right? And it's going to come back with a checkout URL. It's going to redirect me to that URL, and then it's going to redirect me back when it is successful. Let's watch this whole process. Make sure everything is happening in the correct place. So I'm going to set up breakpoint here, And then when it comes back, it's supposed to come back to here, right? Payment success with the session ID. And yeah, let's actually run in debug mode. Go to the first event, click on make payment. Now we're here and I'm going to step over and we get a URL. And with this URL, you see it says checkout.stripe.com. So it goes to checkout.stripe.com, right? And here, if it's not now, then we go inside and we take the user to Stripe, continue and see how it goes. Okay, now I'm at Stripe, right? I'm at Stripe and it tells me what I'm purchasing. I'm purchasing this meditation event. This is the cost, the description, the time it starts and the time that it ends. And over here, I can provide my email. Also for this, I can use 42424. So this is basically a test credit card number for Visa, right? And 5454 is a test number for MasterCard. Okay, so I'm gonna just use these settings. Basically, you can come up with any date and any number here, right? And just provide your whatever name. Doesn't really matter. This is all test. This is not real, right? You're not providing a real credit card number and Stripe is not actually processing real money. So you can click on pay right now and then it's gonna go through the payment process. And when it's successful, see, it comes back to this payment success page. It's triggered and it comes back with a session ID. See this? And I'm gonna just step over this. It created this session and then I have a payment ID right here. Watch this. So session payment intent ID. See, I have a payment intent ID. Okay. So now this is going to go to the RSVP right here, right? And we can also set a breakpoint over here. Okay. And it's going to come with a payment ID. So you see, this is triggered and we have a payment ID right here. And we're going to do our RSVP just like that. And it is going to be successful. And we're going to store that in our database. Although this is not storing in the database. This is just trying to get the user and get the user ID so that we can redirect the user to the manage RSVP events page. Go ahead. It tells me RSVP error. I don't know why there is an error. Probably it's because my debugging actually interfered. Sometimes it's just debugging interferes. So let me actually go to the database and go to RSVP and see whether we already triggered this, which is here. See, the date is just a minute ago. So what I would do is I'm going to clear this to delete from RSVPs. I'm just delete everything. Okay, 2 rows are deleted, so I don't have any RSVP in there. I'm going to go through this whole process again. This time, I'm going to just run without debugging. Okay, so you can see here, I haven't actually, let's go over here. I don't have anything that it's upcoming, which means I didn't RSVP any events. Let's first of all test the free one. Okay, so I'm going to attend the free one and then it redirected me to this manage RSVP events. I can see my upcoming events, which is this gaming event. And then I'm going to pay for the meditation event. I'm going to go to attend and say, yes, I'm going to make the $250 payment. And this time I'm going to use 5454, 4 sets of 5454. And everything else, I can use the same information. Click on pay. I'm going to save this 5454. And now it takes me to the manage RSVP events page. And it shows that I have already RSVP'd this event. So let's go to meditation event and see myself here, right? And if I go to over here, I can see my payment ID that is stored right here. So this is the whole process and everything seems to be working properly. I will see you in the next video.